Hello and welcome to our Carfax Education podcast today, where we're going to be discussing applying for student visas. Now, for students who are planning on studying in the UK, they have hopefully been able to enjoy a restful and relaxing summer break after that build-up and all the stress of the major exams. But however, in my experience, it's about now that the tension starts kicking back in. Obviously, the countdown to A-level results days starts. That this year they're going to be published on the 15th of August. But also the whole anxieties and kind of excitement too of studying abroad really kind of becomes a reality. So whilst there's nothing you can really do to change those exam results now, there are other ways that you can be getting ahead at this stage and making sure that you're really prepared for the move to study in the UK. And obviously a key part of this is securing your study visa. And we're really lucky today to be joined by our visa expert, Nikita, who is going to answer some of the questions that we regularly get asked about for this very important kind of application process. So welcome, Nikita, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Fiona. It's a pleasure.
So, Nikita, you're a fully qualified visa specialist, and you work with families from all over the world, don't you, to make sure that they get the right visas for the right study options, because it is really quite complex. Why do you think it's so important that families use somebody who's qualified in this area?
Yeah, that's actually an excellent question because not many people know that it's a regulated activity in the UK, and it's actually illegal to consult on the visa or other immigration legal matters without a qualification. And we're overseen by the Office of Immigration Services, the commissioner. So, and for that, it's actually there to help families be sure that they're receiving a high quality of service. So, it's actually really good, like, for the families to know that, for example, all qualified advisors have to sit exams. They have to have a certain number of years of experience to actually be able to do that. And so we have effectively a watchdog to make sure that we are providing an adequate and good service. And so it's I would imagine it's similar to if you go to a proper supermarket, you're kind of then you're sure that you're not getting expired food or anything because it's regulated. Or if you go to like a corner market,
Yeah.
so
it is that
you're not protected.
Yeah, it's that reassurance, isn't it? And also, I think because it's quite a complex process and there's quite a tight turnaround. And I think for a lot of families, it's a bit of an unknown quantity. So I think you're right. It's having somebody in this really quite stressful and important moment just to kind of hold your hand through the process. So obviously, right now, the students that certainly lots of the ones that we're working with have applied to the UK. They've got conditional offers from universities, but obviously they haven't had their places confirmed yet because they haven't received their results. So we're often asked by families, what should they be doing, Nikita, at this stage about applying for their study visas? They haven't had the place confirmed, but can they be getting ahead?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the question. So, like, first of all, if it were students like coming to study at the school, hypothetically, they can apply up to 6 months in advance. But if they meet all the conditions, as you mentioned, for the university students, they can only meet their conditions once they receive their results, which is for IB students is usually middle of July, and for A-level students it's the 15th of August, which is actually pretty late because then the course usually starts at the start of September or middle September. Yeah. So they have a pretty short turnaround time. And for that reason, we're trying to make sure that we get all documents and everything ready for the result day, so that when the results are actually out, so they are, if the students applied through UCAS, then they automatically communicated to the universities, and then from that moment, universities can actually issue something called a CAS letter. So that's a certificate of acceptance. That's an official document which is issued through the UK government portal, which usually only 1 or 2 people in the university have access to, so that they have to be trained to use it. And then they just input personal information of the student and issue a unique CAS number. So it's I think something like 18-digit kind of number, which is an official confirmation to the UK, a kind of border and immigration that the student is actually coming to study at this particular university for this particular course for the UK.
So nothing can happen for a university student until they have this all-important CAS number, the CAS number. Is that right?
Yeah. So like basically.
But whilst they're waiting for this CAS number, can they be kind of, collating documents and things? This is certainly a lot of parents are asking us, what documents do we need, Fiona, in order to make this application?
So exactly. So in order to accelerate the process once the CAS is issued in August, we want to get everything else ready in July and at the start of August. So, for example, the visa questionnaire asks for a lot of personal information about the parents, about the address history, but also the travel history in the past 10 years, which can be slightly annoying to try to figure out, and certainly not easy to be done in one day. So that's speaking of the questionnaire. And then as for the list of the documents, one of the hardest are actually getting the bank statements in the correct form, how the UK visa agency wants them. So they specifically ask to have a cash account, so not stocks or shares or any financial products. So on this account should bear the name of the student or parents or legal guardians listed on the birth certificate or some other equivalent document. So the bank statement should have the minimum balance throughout each single day in the past 30 days, not lower than the amount of the full year course fee minus whatever is paid to the university already. So, for example, if the course fee is, let's say, £30,000, and the university at some point already asked for, let's say, a £3,000 deposit, then the minimum amount that they should have is £27,000. But then also plus the so-called maintenance funds, which is in the eyes of the UK immigration is the money students will need to support themselves, which is fixed at £12,006 for London and £9,500 for universities outside London. So that's why the formula for the minimum balance becomes the first year fees. Yeah, if the course is longer than 1 year, then it doesn't matter. It's only the first year fees. So minus whatever is paid to the university and plus either £9,500 or £12,000 for the maintenance. So in our example, for the course of 30K, we subtract 3,000 we paid, and because our university, let's say, is in London, we add another 12,000. So the 27 plus 12 going to give us 39,000 of a minimum balance. And it should be either clearly written on the bank letter that the balance of the account never dropped below the 39,000 in any of the days throughout the last months, or it actually should be just a simple detailed bank statement, which normally any bank can produce, which shows all the debits and credits, and then it usually is a third column which gives the balance after each of the transactions. So it's a pretty standard kind of statement for any bank in the world. So, and then you can quite clearly see that, for example, the balance was kind of 50,000 and then dropped to 45,000, and then it's got topped up to 60, but it never dropped below 39 in 30 days period, and then it's absolutely fine. So
okay, so travel over 10 years, and this bank statement thing, really important, that you've got to have a minimum balance for 30 days, which must be the maintenance funds and the fees that you owe the university. That's, I think, so important, because obviously 30 days the clock is ticking, even kind of starting from next week, to be able to do that. So that's really important. Anything else, Nikita, apart from being able to detail the travel for 10 years in the bank statement?
Yeah. So also, well, in more simple, like more simpler documents are basically the. So, speaking of other documents. So everything else should be translated in English. So sometimes translation takes some time. We can certainly help with that. It should be a certified translation with the details of the translator or the translating company, so which takes a few days. But then for some residents of some countries, they should take a tuberculosis test. So that's normally most of the countries in Asia or in South Africa or in South America. So usually there's only 1 or 2 tests for the entire country. So that's why there are usually some big queues for that. So I would definitely allow at least kind of 2 or 3 weeks for that to happen, so that you can actually book and see this test in the authorized kind of medical clinic in your country. And obviously then the other quite important document which is hard to obtain is IELTS or any other one of the other 4 allowed language kind of certificates. We can definitely consult on that, but most people seek IELTS. It's actually really, there are a few exceptions. For example, when the student was actually sitting in English as A levels or higher IB level, where the student does not need to kind of show any additional proof of English, or if the student is from the major English-speaking country. But in most other cases, they'll have to show IELTS for UKVI, and that is probably one of the most confusing things ever, which unfortunately happens, I think, to 1 or 2 students every year when they go and teach IELTS, academic IELTS, but then it's turned out not to be for the UKVI. So it has to be UK IELTS, academic UKVI. So it have to have three components in it to be eligible for the visa application. So the reason being is that not all centers around the world are compliant with the level of like kind of security check and kind of identity verification to qualify their academic IELTS certificates to be used for the immigration purposes. So, for example, if a country has, let's say, 5 centers to sit IELTS in, maybe only 1 or 2 of them will be qualified or like certified to be UKVI approved. So, and that's but the actual exam is absolutely the same. So it doesn't matter whether the center itself is UKVI approved or not. And that adds an additional line on the IELTS certificate. And well, unfortunately, you can't do much without this line on your certificate.
That's so true, and we've certainly had experience, Nikita, of that with some of our clients who have mistakenly registered for the academic one, not the academic VI, and it is a real problem. So I mean, certainly something we encourage all of our students to take, British passport holders to take the IELTS academic VI, just so that it's done. And ideally, you take that much earlier in the year to kind of make sure that you've got that box ticked. So just to recap, the documents that you're going to need for making a visa application, which you can be working on now, are listing your travel over the last 10 years, making sure your bank statement has got the right minimum balance for covering the fees and the maintenance, both inside and outside of London, and that's got to be there for days. For some people, they've got to take a TB test for from some countries, and obviously, as we've just said, the IELTS academic VI being the really important bit. You touched there just now, Nikita, on kind of different places, people coming from different countries. Obviously, we work with families on our university preparation services who come from all over the world. How does this impact on them making their visa applications? Are there some jurisdictions where it's easier, some where it's more complicated?
Yeah, exactly. So actually, if I'll quickly like pick it up from the moment when we got all the documents and we get the CAS, right? So the kind of like the sequence is after you get the CAS, you can put this CAS number on your application and assume you got all of those documents we've discussed already and already inputted on the system. on the application form, then the only missing line is your CAS number. So you put it in, then you click actually pay and submit. So you have to pay the government fees in full, and they are set, well, at the moment of recording in 2024 at £490 plus 776, so £776 per year of study. So if it's a 3-year course, then it's 776 times 3 plus 490. So that's that kind of the formula for how much UK is charging for the visa. So you pay that, and only then you are able to see the appointment slots for your biometrics. So every single person have to submit their fingerprints and their photograph to be taken. Yeah, by the way, there's a lot of confusion with some other countries which asks for you to bring the photograph of a specific standard. So UK always 100% of time of the cases takes a picture of you inside the center. So they don't take any external kind of like photos, and nothing have to be pre-printed in advance. So that's what's like people often ask. So, and for that reason, this biometrics is not safe. It's like if, let's say, you change your mind and you change your university and you, I don't know, need to apply for some other visa in 1 month's time, you still need to do the biometrics. So it's not like you've done it once in your lifetime and it's forever. You literally do it for each single application, which is slightly annoying, but I mean, you can't really do anything about it. So, and yeah, and then from the moment of when you submitted your biometrics, that's when the kind of the clocks start to tick for the decision making, because they do not start processing your application until you submitted your biometrics. So it's also very important to understand. So the standard visa application time for the student visa is currently 3 weeks. For the normal application. So for the £490 plus 776 per year kind of formula. So that's for that's the standard fee. But then if you want your decision faster and your center and your country allows it, then you can pay additional £500 to the UK government to reduce the time from 3 weeks to 5 working days. So which is effectively under 1 week. So, and if you want it even faster, then you can pay another £500, or basically £1,000 on top of the normal fees, and get your decision in 1 working day. So basically next day. So there is an option for most citizens in most countries to do that, but there are a few exceptions. Primarily, for example, none of these services are available to the Russian citizens, regardless of where they apply. So even if, for example, a Russian citizen is applying from with their residence permit in Italy, let's say, they cannot use this service to accelerate their decision making, and it's very likely that the application like going to be considered within the normal time frame of 3 weeks. However, we are actually seeing that it's now being anything between 3 weeks and even up to 6 or 8 weeks, because
Russian nationals.
That's only, yeah, so that's kind of the only exception at the moment, because they're basically getting an automatic email that's their case is automatically complicated, and that's basically UK will take any amount of time needed for them to kind of consider their specific case. So, and so as I said, in some worst cases, we saw it's taking about 6 to 8 weeks. So,
but by and large, it's 3 weeks for most people maximum if you do the normal route, standard route. But if you do the priority routes, you can do 5 days and do priority as 1 day. Because I think what a lot of parents panic about is that they don't get these results until the 15th of August, and some of those courses start on the 1st or 2nd of September. And obviously, by the time they've had the offer confirmed, it can still take at least a week for the universities to issue the CAS. So Yes, I can see that parents are going to have to, I think, probably consider the priority route for where they can, if that's possible, in order to get this turned around. So once they've done that and they've got the kind of, they've submitted all the paperwork, they've chosen their kind of service, and it comes back to them. So they can go and pick up the passport in person, or it can be couriered to them, I think. What happens then? So now you've got your passport, you've got your visa sticker, Nikita. What happens when you land at Heathrow or Gatwick or Birmingham or wherever?
Yeah, so then you simply use your passport visa sticker to actually cross the border. So unlike many other countries, so UK like border force, so the actual person, so they actually have the authority and they're instructed to ask kind of questions on the border. That's completely normal because they do like the second verification that it's actually, well, that you are the real person. So they'll ask you about your course or just any sort of kind of normal like questions, like just to make sure that you are an adequate normal person. So like nothing to be worried about. So they just kind of do this kind of like sensibility check. Let's say so they don't suspect anything. They don't think that you broke any law. It's absolutely normal for them to ask you.
Be relaxed about it and just completely honest. Okay.
Yeah,
so you get
they
through
can ask
that
about the
bit.
weather or anything. Yeah. So it's fine.
Smile and wave, and then so you get that. So you get through border control. Then obviously you go off to your university, but it's not the end of it there, is it?
Yeah, so once you get to the university, then from the middle of 2024 and then from the 2025 onwards, there no longer be a BRP system. So if, for example, you're already in the UK and you probably are familiar with a plastic card, so which is your residence card, which you have had to receive at the university or the post office once you arrive. So from anyone starting, to study from 2024, from September 2024, there no longer be any physical proof of your actual kind of status in the UK. So your sticker is only valid for you to enter within the 90 days period. So, and then once you're there, you have to create an account with UK Visa and Immigration. So, which is actually extremely super simple. You download an app, you scan your face, you scan your passport. So as you would do with, let's say, opening an online bank application or with many other services nowadays, we're living in 2024, so it's all getting digital. So and then once your kind of identity is confirmed by the app, so you can then generate something called a share code, which is actually a QR code. Unfortunately, we've all been familiar with these things during COVID. So I think when you have like to show the QR code here and there, so I think so kind of like people are slightly more familiar with that. So that's how it's going to work in the future. If you need to prove your status in the UK, let's say for your landlord, if you want to rent privately, or for your employer, if you want to take an internship, or even for your kind of university. So they want to know that you're here legally, then you just go on your app and yeah, you show them this kind of QR code. And then they can then kind of put it on, well, on the government website and check that it's actually real. So
amazing. So that's brilliant. So the bit you've got to do at home is going to the visa office, submitting your biometrics, paying your visa fees, and collecting your passport. And then in the UK, be nice to the guy who the border control person as you go through, get to your university, set up the online account. We'll put a link in the profile with this, generate the QR code, and essentially you're then good to go. So once you've got your kind of student working visa, and what does that mean? Obviously, it allows you to study in the UK, Nikita, because that's the key thing. But I think it allows you to do some other things as well, doesn't it?
yeah, exactly. So for example, you can actually rent privately. So on a student visa, which for example, you cannot do on a visitor visa or on a short-term study visa. So as it's so called. So if the course is less than 6 months, so for the proper student visas, for the courses longer than 6 months, you can rent. So privately from a landlord or from the agency. You can also work. So you are allowed to work up to 20 hours during your term time. So as set by your university, usually on the website. And then outside the term time, which is very typically during Christmas, so it's about 3 or 4 weeks during Christmas, and then about 3 or 4 weeks during Easter, and about 2 months during the summer break. So that's outside the term dates, so that when you're allowed to work, well, basically without any restrictions as you would do on a work visa or any other visa. So you can basically take on a full-time internship, for example, which is what many students are trying to do to then kind of help them secure a full-time job after the graduation. So, and yeah, so it can be paid, unpaid. It can be, well, it can be 40 hours, can be 50 hours. I don't know if you're going for investment banking or something else. So there's absolutely no restrictions on what you're allowed to do outside, but it have to be outside the term time.
And that's so reassuring to know that, because I think a lot of people probably won't be familiar with that. And you also touched on there, Nikita, about the kind of, postgraduate, because obviously for masters you'd have to apply for potentially a separate visa. But I think there's something about once you've got your visa, obviously that covers you to study in the country, but it also allows you to stay on for it, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So if you successfully completed your course, and successfully completing means at least getting a pass, so like degree, so I think which is about kind of 40% usually for kind of for most places, you are then qualified to get something called a graduate visa, which is for 2 years if you finish a bachelor or a master's degree, or for 3 years if you finish a PhD course. So, but then you have to be strategic about it, because maybe it's, if you're considering because you can only get graduate visa once in your lifetime. So maybe it works for you to go straight into master's and then get the 2-year kind of post-study graduate visa after that. Because if you use up your visa maybe between bachelor's or master's, then you won't be able to get it after the master's degree. But
it's good to know that there is a 2-year window where students can stay on in the country and to work. So I think that's a really kind of key part to understand. Now, obviously, we've really focused here on the students, Nikita, because that's the kind of the crux of the matter right now. But I know, speaking from a parent's perspective, and obviously lots of parents who we work with ask me about this, I want to go with my child to help them settle in, or I want to be able to go and visit my child whilst they're at university. What's the kind of situation for a parent, and visas for parents who want to travel to be with their child, or to help that child settle in? What are the kind of visa options for them?
That's an excellent question. So I would split it up in kind of in 2 options. So one is if the parents are not intending to kind of settle in the UK or have some kind of residency status, then they can simply get a visitor visa. So usually if you've never ever been to the UK, you then apply for a simple visitor visa, which is up to 6 months. And then once you build your immigration history, so which is being, well, at least once in the UK without any problems, then on your second application, you can choose to apply for 2, 5, or 10-year long visitor visa. So after that, so that is very subjective, but typically, let's say if you have a valid reason to apply, and your child is studying full-time for the next, let's say, 3 years, then yeah, so I would say it's reasonable to try to apply for, say, a 5-year kind of visitor visa to the UK, and you're very likely to be approved. If not, you actually be just downgraded from 5-year to 2-year visa, for example, but you usually won't be rejected. So
okay, so there are definitely options for families who want to be able to kind of visit, and they can get extended options for that, which is great. And obviously, if parents want to sort of move to the UK to be with their child, are there other options around that as well, just sort of briefly?
Yeah, exactly. So the main problem with the visitor visa is that there are lots of restrictions. So you're not allowed to work or do any paid activity inside the UK. You are not allowed to rent privately. So you can stay in a hotel, in Airbnbs, but not properly rent. So which is usually a problem. And then obviously you're restricted to up to 6 months for a single stay. But in practice, you have to be very careful with that. And we like all advisors recommend to stay no more than 2 or 3 months at a time, because it's then very hard to prove that, for example, unless you have a really big bank statement on how you managed to survive in the UK for 6 months without doing any, well, illegal work because you're not allowed to work, right? So how you managed to support yourself for so long. So, for that reason, some parents which want to actually, well, properly live with, while their children are studying, which is probably more common for maybe school children. So, but also for some maybe first or second year university students as well. There are kind of 3 major routes for an adult to migrate to the UK. So one being actually finding a job. So we can probably help with that in most cases, or actually doing a master's themselves. So, but that's not usually something what kind of parents are considering, but kind of study visa and work visa are still there for everyone. The more interesting one is the global talent visa, which is if you've had a career of at least 3 years, so more typically 5 years in a digital tech or art industry, then you can try to prove your achievements and actually get a talent visa to stay for 3 or 5 years, depending on how talented you are, and actually then get a settled status and even kind of get a British citizenship in 5 years in some cases. So we can definitely kind of assess your CV and kind of your background for the suitability for that. Or the last option is actually kind of getting an innovator founder visa, which is basically a business entrepreneurship visa for anyone who wants to start a company in the UK. So it has to be really innovative, and you have to invest the minimum of £50,000 throughout the 3 years you are running your business in the UK. But then again, you can qualify for the for the indefinite leave status in 3 years, and so for the British passport in 5 years. And well, but then you have to kind of commit a minimum of, I don't know, at least 20 maybe hours a week for to run a startup yourself. Or actually, there's no limit for actually hiring a managing director to run it on your behalf if you want. So there's also
so that's fascinating. So there are short-term solutions for families that want to come in and out, and obviously, you know, what you've just explained is longer term. I have to say, listening to you, it really brings home to me how important it is to have an advisor guiding you through this, because as you pointed out, there are so many different options. But just to bring it back to the students who are our kind of main focus today, thank you so much. I think you've set out really clearly what you can be doing now, the documents that you need to be kind of collating and getting all that information together, the time frame, the waiting for the all-important CAS number once the university place is confirmed, and then obviously the kind of step-by-step guide as to what happens once you've got that CAS number, going to filling out the forms, going to the embassy, getting the number, coming to the UK, converting that electronically. So thank you, Nikita. You have been a wealth of information and wisdom, and we really appreciate you kind of sharing that with us. I'm sure this is going to be very reassuring for families who are at this critical stage of applying for study visas. And hopefully this will really help them to avoid the pitfalls and make a successful application, particularly with your support. So Nikita, thank you very much indeed for joining us today, and I hope everyone's found that useful.
Yeah, thanks so much, Fiona. Thank you for having me.